And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. I am Chad Holmes, along with Jason Foster, as we continue summertime. I'm starting to think we may not have football weather this year.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy, and you look at the forecast, and it just keeps getting better. I mean, next week, a little bit of a cool down, but wow, I'm ready to wear a sweatshirt at a football game.
I know. You're exactly right, but a lot to talk about. We'll talk about Week 6 of the high school football season here to start. We'll talk about Week 7 later in the show, and we'll have a couple of guests coming up at 6:30. It's our coach guest for this week. Head football coach at Wausau West, Matt Johnson, coming off their win against Stevens Point last week. And then our student-athlete guest from Wausau East. He'll be senior running back Ian Stahl, coming up at 7:06. I guess the only thing that would have been better is if it would have been a log week. Yeah. Which people back in the past, yes. So long ago.
People still want to know when the next log game is. It hasn't quite sunk in yet.
Exactly. But let's talk about last week. And let's start with the Valley. Let's talk about that game on Saturday because Wausau West, Stevens Point, we had it right here on 98.9 WXCO. And it was an upset. The Warriors knocked off Stevens Point 28-21. It was a 79-yard touchdown pass from Joe Gravine to Shea Jones with 2 minutes left in the game. Spash did get the ball back. They drove it down to the 15, but the Warriors were able to knock away 3 passes and turn over the Panthers on downs in the final seconds. Shea Jones, 4 catches, 133 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tegan Rasmus had 9 tackles and 3 quarterback sacks for the Warriors as well. So West moves into second place in the Wisconsin Valley Conference at 3-1. They're 4-2 overall. Stevens Point got a big day from quarterback Trent Breitbach. 24 carries, 182 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 17 of 28 passing for 172. But in the end, every time Stevens Point scored in that game, Wausau West scored immediately. 3 different times. Next drive, and I thought that was one of the keys. They just responded, and I thought after that first 60-yard touchdown run by Breitbach very early, the fact that West was able to score right away was huge.
Yeah, I thought there were some really big moments in the game. I would say the way West came out with the rough kickoff return and a quick 3-and-out, and then first down, they got them first holding, so first down and 20. Oh, yeah, the lateral.
Yeah.
First down and 20.
Second and 20.
Oh, yeah, because that was, holy cow, was I even at the game. Yeah. Second and 20, you feel like, okay, we're going to get a stop here, whatever. And the next play, boom, he's
easy
gone.
too.
Almost untouched, yeah. With the way that game started, I think that was a pretty steep hill for the Warriors to climb. So that drive, the pick 6 towards the end of the first half.
That was a huge play,
key defensive stops along the way in the second half by a bunch of different guys. I mean, Tegan Rasmus had a phenomenal game. Obviously, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that. But I look at some of those other plays, those interior linemen. They didn't shut anybody down throughout the game, but there were several times to get off the field that there were big stops in there. We had a batted ball on a 4th down pass attempt and the big 4th down play in the end zone that made kind of a drop, but good defense on that end. Yeah, it was just the West did enough things right to win that game, and probably the biggest thing was to overcome that early adversity.
And I also thought Jacob Shearer was big on defense. I thought he made a lot of plays from linebacker, and Stevens Point had roughly 435 yards of total offense, but in the end, West made enough plays. There were just again, we talk about this all the time. There's just a number of plays in the game you have to make, and they made them. And in that pick 6, sometimes they well, why don't you try more trick plays? Well, sometimes those trick plays come back and bite you, and that was a trick play by Stevens Point. They tried it, and instead of scoring, they had Wausau West score. Instead of them having the lead and the football to start off the third quarter, West had a 14-7 lead, and even though Spash did score on the first drive of the third quarter, it could have been a lot worse for Wausau West, except for that big play as Towle was able to make that pick 6.
Yeah, it was very interesting that oftentimes during the game I spent some time standing next to Coach Johnson's dad, Tom Johnson, who's actually one of my head football coaches when I was in high school at Wausau West.
I should say Mua, Tatum Mua,
yes,
not Towle. Yeah, Tatum Mua.
And
Want to be correct.
I was standing next to him during that play, and he kind of said the same things. Like, God, sometimes coaches just can't get out of their own ways, and that was a tough one. I guess you put those plays in, you work them, and it seemed like the right time to do it. But sometimes when they go wrong, they go really, really wrong. And I thought there were just several other times. I thought West capitalized on some big things. Obviously gave up way too many yards, and they're going to have to clean that up moving down. But I thought they made some really good decisions from a coaching standpoint, and I think that maybe Spash kind of had some decisions, play calling, stuff like that maybe did not help them out moving down in the second half.
Well, DC Everest is still atop the conference. They defeat Eau Claire North on the road 39-7 last Friday night. Corbin Enzeroth, 4 straight 100-yard rushing games in conference. He had 133 yards on 18 carries and 3 touchdowns. Xavier Edwards had 5 passes caught, including a touchdown. So Everest 4-2 overall, 4-0 in the conference, and right now looking pretty sharp. They still, as you said, still have that Stevens Point game coming up, but DC Everest again after that rough go of it in the non-conference have been able to really roll so far in the conference.
Yeah, I think big plays, big results from their good players, right? Or their big players. I think that they've had that issue at quarterback, so probably takes away a little bit from what Coach Mitchell would like to do from a throwing the ball standpoint in the game planning and in-game situations. But Enzenroth has stepped up, and like you said, 400-plus yard rushing games, significantly over 100-yard rushing games, and just passing enough and having a weapon like Xavier Edwards makes it tough. If you're able to run the football, doesn't matter how well you defend Edwards, he's going to find his shots and his chance to get open. So, I think that Everest is in a very good spot. I think that West was obviously very, very excited to beat Spash, but I would have to think Everest was probably a close second, seeing the Panthers take a loss prior to their matchup later in the year.
Also in the Valley, Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids finished well at Wausau West 2 weeks ago. They started well against Marshfield. They had a 13-0 lead early, but then Marshfield rallied past Rapids 24-13. Hayden Carlson has been the big offensive force for Marshfield this season. Another 100-plus yard game, 124 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Tigers improved to 2-4, but 2-1 in the conference. Rapids 0-5 and 0-3 in the league. They had 105 yards passing and 2 touchdowns from Owen Richardson, but for Marshfield, it was a must-win again, and they've had 2 must-win games this year, and they got them both. That tight one against Eau Claire Memorial, and then a come-from-behind win against Rapids. It's not been easy, but they're kind of where they were last year going into the Wausau West game, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously played really well and won that game last year. I think Coach Gadel does a great job. Part of it is going down 13-0, be easy to fold in that one. They probably came in, like most teams do, thinking that they're going to hand it to Rapids, and I think Rapids is definitely showing some signs of life. I think when Coach Krenz looks at what he's trying to do this season, obviously they knew there weren't going to be a ton of checks in the win column, but you kind of look at those wins within the game, right? Like improvements, and whether it's penalties, toughness, time of possession, first downs, all those things they're looking to build. And the last 2 weeks, I think they've probably been able to pull a lot of positives out, in particular their passing game in the first half of this one. But good win for Marshfield for sure, being able to run the ball. Looks like they're still using 2 quarterbacks, but they're maybe starting to like that younger quarterback a little bit more and doing things in good effort, good line. And you know what you're going to get out of Marshfield. They're going to get tough, they're aggressive, and they're always very athletic.
Great Northern Conference, and last Friday, again, a game that was broadcast right here on 98.9 WXCO. Wausau East earned their first conference win, knocking off Medford 31-8. Ian Stahl, who will be our student-athlete guest at 7:06, ran for 163 yards, 19 carries, and 2 touchdowns. Sophomore quarterback Cam Rye was 6 of 11, 142 yards, and a touchdown in his first varsity start for East. Medford had a lot of running yards. They went up and down the field, but were stopped by East on more than half a dozen 4th down situations. The Raiders got 326 yards on the ground, 0 through the air, 141 yards rushing from Will Wolchek, 127 from Sawyer Elsner. But Medford drops to 2-4, 2-2 in the GNC. East is 2-4, 1-3 in the GNC.
Yeah, great weekend for the home teams at Tom Field. Wausau West kind of pulling off the upset against Bash. And I would say going into this one, based on the previous 5 weeks, that Medford was probably favored in this one. So really nice bounce back win for Wausau East, and one they really needed to have, and really gives you a much different outlook on the remainder of the season, because as they had been playing, or the results of the games that they had, both that Medford game, the Merrill game coming up, and what Lakeland had done prior to this last week looked like a pretty daunting schedule ahead of them. But they get this win against Medford, and they're kind of back in the driver's seat as far as where things end for them. But looks like a really nice job. Sounds like their offensive line is playing better, still got big plays, and the little plays, right? Getting the first down, staying on the field. But sounds like their defense had some outstanding stops in that game as well.
There are no undefeateds left in the GNC after Mosinee knocked off Tomahawk on the road 21-14. Treve Stoffel had 13 completions and 17 attempts for 236 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mitchell Micklig had 4 catches, 116 yards, and a score for Mosinee, who are now tied for first in the conference at 3-1, 4-2 overall. Rex Riley had 79 yards on the ground, 8.5 tackles defensively, but Tomahawk is now 3-1 as well in the GNC and 5-1 overall. So I knew at some point everybody was going to lose in this conference. It would have been quite a run for anybody because it's such a balanced league. But that is a huge win for Mosinee, because if you don't win that game, odds are their conference championship hopes would have been gone.
Yeah, for sure, huge win for them. Obviously, I think we can talk about the fact that Tomahawk's for real, right? This wasn't a blowout. It was a close game, but Mosinee most certainly found something they liked in their passing game, because not a headline that Treve Stoffel had a great game. I would say what sticks out to me in this is the type of game he had throwing the ball. This is not characteristic of, he's been efficient this year and had some success, but these are by far the biggest numbers he's had throwing the ball. So they obviously found something they liked in that regard, defensively or offensively against Tomahawk's defense. And I think they're back in the driver's seat, right? I think there's a bunch of these games on the schedule, and everybody, right? Like, I think now we really find out who Tomahawk is after this week, and we see what Mosinee, because Mosinee probably lost some ones on this schedule already that they've had circled as W's. So it really sets this conference up for being nip and tuck all the way through, and kind of like we've talked about, the potential there for there to be a lot of GNC schools in the playoffs come the postseason.
Yeah, 6 of the teams are either 2-2 or 3-1. So within one game of first place at this point of the season leads to a lot of huge games coming up. And Merrill is tied for first now, 3-1 in the conference, 4-2 overall. They went on the road and defeated Lakeland 34-14. So Lakeland, after starting 4-0, is now 4-2. It was a game where Merrill trailed 14-7 in the second quarter, but what scored the final 27 points of the game, Kanan Yankee had 19 carries, 155 yards. Cole Rudai, 3 of 5 passing, but again, very efficient. 108 yards and 2 touchdowns, added 61 yards rushing and a TD. So, Merrill really, we talked earlier, and they let us know early when they went to Mosinee and lost 21-14 that this was a competitive team, but they've really done the job the last couple of weeks, and now all of a sudden they have a shot at a conference championship.
Yeah, ultimately they've strung together how many really nice games in a row here. I mean, when you go back to the Mosinee game, and then you
go back to the second half of that game at Crandon after they lost their opener, they were down at halftime. They didn't score in the first half of the second game, but since then, the last 4.5 games, they've been exceptionally good.
Yeah, doing a lot of things well. Kind of building off the success they had at the end of last year, and kind of coming together and playing really well for Coach Wodzinski. So really nice win for them. Sets up a great matchup, I think, this week for homecoming on a Saturday between them and Wausau East.
Yep, we'll look forward to talking about that one later on in the show. Rhinelanders now 2-2 in the conference. They beat Antigo 54-8. Rhinelanders I still think, a bit of an enigma. They had such a poor performance against Tomahawk the week before. They had the nice comeback against Wausau East at Tom Field. Not really sure. And they had the first game of the year where they had the lead in the fourth quarter against Lakeland. I'm not sure yet about Rhinelander.
Yeah, I think they definitely fit the mold of the GNC this year, right? Kind of the ups and downs. When you're ready to write them off, they have a big win, and when you start to think they're playing well, they maybe come out with a tough loss. So, yeah, definitely one of the teams to watch down during the stretch to see, are they over that 500 mark, and are they in that playoff contention, or is it not
Exactly. So that's the GNC. Then the CWC Large. Last week we had a chance to talk to Marathon coach Vince Dinkel, and his team was able to make it 2 wins in a row, 50-27 over Wyowega Fremont. That's one of those games, I think, for both teams that when you look at a road to the playoffs in a very tough conference, that's the one you kind of want, whether you're Wyowega or Marathon. In the end, it was Marathon, and a couple of massive nights for Marathon players. You had True Thurs, 16 of 21 passing, 248 yards and 5 touchdowns, and then he added 99 yards rushing on just 5 attempts and another touchdown. And wide receiver Garrett Bracewell, he had 11 catches, 205 yards, 5 touchdowns. So Marathon improves to 3-3 overall, 2-2 in the conference. Wyowega is now 3-3 and 1-3 in the conference. But after a couple of W's, all of a sudden Marathon has worked themselves back into the conversation in terms of at least a playoff berth.
Yeah, and you talk about, I mean, you can win games in different ways to kind of help you moving forward. You win a close battle or an overtime game or win a game late. You talk about toughness and those sorts of skills. Yeah. But when you're looking at what you're going to be down the stretch and who you are offensive and defensively, this is a matchup preseason that you probably looked at and said both of these teams circled and said this was one we have to win. And Wyowega Fremont's been playing, I mean, the last couple of years has been a team we thought was maybe on the rise in this conference, and Marathon's kind of had their struggles a little bit. So not only to win this game, but to win it by scoring 50 points, I think is a real nice shot in the arm for Coach Dinkel and Marathon.
Wittenberg-Burnham kind of had their season on the line last week. They had a home game against Loyal Greenwood. They trailed in the fourth quarter, but got the game-winning touchdown, defeated Loyal Greenwood 19-16, snapping a 2-game losing streak. Caden Yeager had a 99-yard night, had a touchdown as well for the Chargers, who are 3-3, 2-2 in conference. Loyal Greenwood, after starting 4-0, now are 4-2 and 2-2 in the league. But I think for Loyal Greenwood, again, they're showing that this is a team that is much more competitive going on the road to Wittenberg, having a chance to win. But bottom line for Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, after losing in overtime to Stratford and then that surprising loss at Spencer Columbus, they needed that one, and they got it by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, I think kind of like we just talked about, how you win makes a big deal of learning who and what you are as a team, and they lost that tough one in very similar fashion, but overtime against Stratford in a game they probably thought they could have had. And so to come back in another close game like that where they were down in the fourth quarter and be able to pull it off, that's a good win for that program, and we'll see if it's able to propel them going down the stretch.
Amherst and Stratford remain tied for first in the CWC Large. Amherst is now 6-0 overall, 4-0 in the conference. They beat Spencer Columbus 35-22, and Stratford 4-0 in the league, 4-2 overall, and they beat a struggling Colby squad 57-0 on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we've kind of talked a lot about Colby's struggles this year, and Stratford now doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Which I think there's a lot of question marks surrounding that program early on, not from the people on the outside, more so from the inside after the incredible run that they've had. So nice to see them steady the ship. Really big matchups for them coming down the stretch.
Merriwood CWC, it was Edgar beating Assumption 35-0. Tucker Strite, 66 yards passing. Maverick Butt, 57 yards on the ground. But it's the defense. Lucas Donkey had 9.5 tackles for Edgar. They've allowed just 12 points total this season. They're 6-0, 4-0 in the conference. Assumption 2-2 in the conference, 2-4 overall. But we've seen this before. 12 points is not a record for them. They've had years where they've given up less than that at this point of the year. But offensively, again, the numbers don't jump off the page for them. It's been defense, and then they've had enough offense to win every week.
Right, and I think when I look at the numbers for both Strite and Butt and these, obviously those are guys who probably didn't play much offense in the second half. I know that Coach Sins takes, we've said, I sound like a broken record, Coach Sins takes a lot of pride in his defense, and I think that 0 on the defensive side means a lot more to him than what the final score is offensively. And, yeah, I think a tough night for Assumption, but when you go into Edgar, you kind of know that that's where they're at right now. They're rolling. I think they sit atop of Division 6, if I'm not mistaken, even with getting bumped up. Although when I looked at those rankings this week, there's some really nice teams in that D6. I mean, their old foe Regis sits right there behind them. So yeah, that's regardless of how it happens, there's going to be no gimmies in that bracket.
No, you're exactly right. Does everyone in D7 very happy they're not there this year? That's for sure. One of the more interesting games that I saw this score Friday night kind of jumped out because we talked a lot about Abbotsford. They've been playing so very well since their loss to Loyal Greenwood in Week 1. Pittsville had been struggling. They have not won a game on the field this year, but boy, Pittsville, they almost pulled off the upset on the road. Pittsville led in Abbotsford 36-28 heading to the fourth, but the Falcons scored 22 points in the final quarter to rally for a 50-42 win that extends their win streak to 5 and keeps them tied with Edgar at 4-0 in the conference. But you have to give a big tip of the cap to Pittsville's Dawson Luther. Luther had 389 yards rushing on 29 attempts, scored 5 touchdowns. I mean, just a massive, massive night. Abbotsford's Chase Bowler ran 10 times for 132 yards and a touchdown. But that must have been a fun one to watch in Abbotsford. And again, Abbotsford continues to rack up points, but that's got to be a little bit of a red flag as they still have Edgar and some other big games coming up.
Yeah, for sure. And to this point, they've actually been playing pretty solid defense to go along with that run game. So that's an interesting one. And for Pittsville and for Dawson Luther, I mean, that's probably close to, if not record-breaking stuff at that school. So memorable night. Obviously, he'd much rather have the W in his back pocket to go along with it, but kudos to him for a great night.
Yeah, 389. That's a season's worth right there.
Yes, it is for many, many guys.
Auburndale, 5-1 overall, 3-1 in the Merriwood CWC after winning at Pacelli 49-0. Nathan Van Wy, 11 carries, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the Eagles. Pacelli falls to 2-4 overall, 1-3 in the conference. But Auburndale, again, the hiccup against Edgar, and then they had a real tight one against Marathon as well. So they're doing the job, I think, against some of the lower competition. I'm still wondering about them, and I think when they play like Abbotsford, I think I'm curious to see for both those teams, because some of those games against the lower tier, I don't think you find out exactly what, because these teams not only want to win a conference, they want to make a run in the playoffs. I think there's still some questions there, but Auburndale, again, 5 out of 6 in the win tally, doing the job.
Yeah, you take care of the games you need to take care of. Obviously, they'd like to have the Edgar one back, but I'm not sure that would be much of a different outcome for them. So, like you said, I really look forward to that Auburndale-Abbotsford matchup and to see where how the offenses match up and who plays defense that night.
8-player football, Newman Catholic received a forfeit win over Menominee Nation. They are 4-2 heading into their homecoming game Friday night against Port Edwards. That game will be broadcast on the Sports 2 stream at WXCO.FM and the Civic Media app. And Athens is now 5-1. I think, again, they only had, one win last year, and they are 5-1 now. They beat Chequamegon Butternut Mercer 50-20. Evan Paseo had 105 yards and on just 8 carries and a touchdown for the Blue Jays. So nice to see there was not a jinx after he was on the show last week. So, but again, I mean, Athens, I was surprised last year when they didn't win more often. I guess I'm a little surprised this year because they're winning all the time.
Yeah. Honestly, he did a great job last week on the show, too, kind of talking about the program and where they're at. And it sounds like they have some nice leadership and some really nice athletes and being rewarded for their efforts.
All right, so that's week number 6. Yeah, week number 6 in the books. We'll talk about week number 7 a little bit later on, but coming up, we'll have our guest for tonight. Coming up at 7:06, it will be our student-athlete guest from Wausau East, senior running back Ian Stahl. And coming up next, we'll have our coach guest for this week from the Wausau West Warriors, their head man, Matt Johnson. So that's coming up as we continue here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO.
We are the NFHS. That stands for the National Federation of State High School Associations. But really, what we stand for, together with the WIAA, are the 178,000 high school sports students in Wisconsin. And so we stand. We stand for the runners, soccer and basketball players. We stand for their coaches, administrators, and officials. We stand for the swimmers, football players, and wrestlers. We stand for the golfers, softball, and volleyball players. We stand as the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and all who participate in them and make them possible. Because it is our purpose to ensure that high school students get to play, perform, and compete together. To learn more about who we are and what we stand for, visit nfhs.org.
Are you passionate about local high school sports? So are we. WXCO 98.9 FM is proud to be the only station in Wausau bringing you live, play-by-play coverage of high school sports, game after game, season after season. But we can't do it alone. We are currently seeking local sponsors and community partners who believe in the power of sports to bring people together, inspire youth, and energize our hometown pride. Promote your business, support our local athletes, be heard by thousands of loyal local listeners. If your business is interested in supporting live sports broadcasts while gaining valuable exposure, now is the perfect time to become a WXCO sports sponsor. Message us on our Facebook page or call or text our sales rep, Aaliyah, at 608-573-1597. That's 608-573-1597. Let's keep Wausau High School sports on the air together.
And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And you can also catch the program on YouTube, youtube.com, and the 98.9 WXCO channel. Our in-studio engineer is Ian Welsh. I will say good to have you back this week. I didn't like pushing all those buttons last week.
I got lonely in here when Ian was gone and you had to be back there.
Well, it's nice to be back.
Good to have you, too. And
Thanks.
It's time now for our coach guest for this week. Wausau West Warriors coming off a nice win, I would say, over the Stevens Point Panthers on Saturday. Very happy to welcome back to the program Matt Johnson. Coach, glad to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Well, let's jump right in about Saturday's game before we talk generally about your team and the season. But a Saturday afternoon game, first time in a long time for Wausau West. It was a lot of fun. It was a very competitive, it was a very exciting football game. One of the things I said to Coach Foster before is that every time that Stevens Point scored, you guys came right back and scored yourselves and earned a thrilling 28-21 win. For your program, for your team, for this group of Wausau West Warriors, that had to be just a massive victory.
Yeah, it was. And Stevens Point's kind of one of those measuring stick programs, and it's one that you look at on the calendar every year, and you have to work hard to try to get that one. And they're a well-coached team, and they're a lot of talent on that team. So, and I know Joe and a couple other guys joked around, and they've beaten Stevens Point one time in their career. And Joe's a three-sport athlete, hockey, basketball, or hockey and baseball. And a couple of the other younger kids chimed in, too, and said, we've never beaten them in anything. So they're a good program, and they're good at everything. So, yeah, it was a very big win. But at the end of the day, it's just the next win that we needed to try to get, to reach our goals, and that was great. And I kind of told the guys, I said, if that's the best we are, then this didn't really mean that much, So we came back out this week to just try to get better because we know we have another great opponent on Friday in Marshfield.
Yeah, so sometimes you look at, after games, you look at stats, right? Like how well we did on offense, how well we did or didn't do on defense. And then some games are just great wins, right? And maybe the stats don't tell the story that you want. What kind of game was this? And what does this game mean for how you guys won it?
Yeah, it's a good question. We ran like 37 plays on offense, so we didn't possess the ball very long, and they possessed the ball a ton. So, that time of possession is a big stat that you look at, and it's a classic case. We scored that on one play, and we scored a touchdown, and it was like, did we leave too much time left kind of thing? So, we averaged over 5 yards a rush. We completed, I think 8 of 11 passes, so over 72%, 72% of our passes or so. So statistically speaking, it was okay, but their stats looked pretty good too. They ran the ball a lot, and obviously Breitbach is just about impossible to bring down. He's so strong and such a good runner, and so statistically, maybe it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but you definitely just walk away. And we talked about the Wisconsin Rapids win the week before, and just saying, maybe we thought we were going to beat them by more. People thought we were going to beat them by more, but I think being in that situation late in the game, 14-12, trying to hold on. It's the situation then that repeated itself again this week, and we were better in that situation. So we learned from it and we gained experience. So I think just it's a win to say, hey, look at, if you put yourself in those situations and you learn from them and you get better, this is the kind of things that happen. So.
And you kind of look at those defensive stats too. You kind of put up, like, you're right. Like, no one's going to hang their hat on the number of rushing yards their quarterback had, but they made plays when they had to, and that's ultimately right. Bend, don't break, and getting off the field. I mean, how many times did they go for it on fourth down and being able to get off the field? Like, really big stuff.
Absolutely. And the biggest stat that Coach Wimmer kept pointing out to me is they were averaging 42 points a game coming in, and against us they scored 21 points. So stats can say whatever they want, but that number is the most important one. And you're right. It was fourth downs a lot. We faced a lot of them the last couple of weeks. The one that stands out is Cappy kind of knocking that pass down, and just big moments for people and guys stepping up in those moments, and the excitement. Stopping a team on fourth down creates a lot of excitement, and you watch your sideline jump up and down, and guys run past each other, and so those are the things that get the momentum going and stuff.
One aspect that kind of jumped out, and again, this is just feel from watching it upstairs on Saturday, was that when you did pass the ball, and I think on the game-winning touchdown pass, it was another example of it where Joe Gravine had enough time to look downfield. He had a chance to look over the field and then find Shea Jones open. It felt like your defensive front was able to get to the quarterback when he needed to in those kind of situations, not allow them to look downfield all the time. A dangerous set of wide receivers for Wisconsin Rapids. I should say for Stevens Point. Did it feel like, because I know that's an area that we've talked about this season, about being up front, because you lost a lot of really good talent on the lines, both offensively and defensively. I thought in that game that up front, in a number of the big situations, your team stepped up front. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's very fair to say. And I think being the pass protection thing, the kind of thing you mentioned first, is that was something that we worked on all week. We tried to shore up some protections. We had some miscommunications the week before and some things that went wrong that we spent some time. And to the kids' credit, then they took it out on the field and they executed. You talk about those guys up front for us, Quentin and Jackson Nordine and Jerry Lowe and Jack Graff and Dane Zenner. Those guys, they don't get a ton of credit, but even after practice yesterday, we just stopped and it just frozen. Like, you know what? No matter what happened, these guys are playing hard up front. Mm-hmm. They're moving quickly, and I think there was a little bit of, we don't have enough up front. And those guys took that a little bit personally, and they're working really hard, and they're not the biggest group that we're ever going to throw out there, that any team's ever going to throw out there, but they're working their butts off, and defensively too. Obviously, when you talk about controlling line of scrimmage, a big part of that starts with moving number 7 inside and his willingness to play some defensive end, and obviously he's kind of a menace to block up there and is doing a really nice job, and that kind of helps solidify that front, and then we're not needing to rotate guys and play them both ways as much up front, and I think that helps with the fourth quarter stuff too, having some fresh guys, because we had been doing that quite a bit early in the year.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the game was big plays, because kids are going to when we played, you remember some wins and some losses and some very vague stats about things, but ultimately you remember the wow stuff. And in this game, there was a bunch of those, right? Like when Tayden had that pick, couldn't have come at a bigger, better time. And it's so funny, like when that happened, I had 2 or 3 people say, God, that was just like when Reed Napawaki did it against Smash. Like, over those years ago. Yep. And people still remember that. So what a great memory for him. You already mentioned Cappy swatting the one down like that. Those are things that kids carry with them for a long time, yeah.
Absolutely, and watching that ball fly into Shea's hands and stuff too, and then watching him run down and kind of do his little flex in the end zone when he crosses that goal line. It absolutely is those things. And just to piggyback off that, one of the most fun things is you watch the recording, you watch our film, and you watch our sideline when that stuff happens. And there's 7 kids, there's kids running up and down the sideline. I think Joe maybe got away with a penalty and being on the field. He was so excited on that one. But you're right. Those are the fun moments, and that's kind of what we even focused on. In film on Monday, we ended it by just showing those and, hey, look at this guy and look at that guy. And it's not always the guys that are out on the field doing it, but everybody, when you get everybody bought in, I tell the guys all the time, like, this is supposed to be fun. You get to hang out with your friends. You get to do cool things all day. And if we're not celebrating them and we're not having a good time doing it, then really what's the point to this whole thing? And but just to your point, I remember the Reed thing happening, or the Tayden interception, and it was an immediate flashback to Reed. So.
And one more question about the game before we start talking bigger picture is when Stevens Point did score to make it 21-21, and you had the football 1st and 10 at your 21-yard line, and I said on the air, I said, this first play is going to be very important because they had all their timeouts. That if you get in a bad situation, they could easily use their timeouts, get the football back, and try to win the game. Could you talk about your mindset? Because going back, throwing the football in that situation, you had not thrown. I think that was only the second pass you threw in the second half. The first one was Jackson Riley coming in. I thought another confident play call because you brought in the quarterback after Joe got banged up. I imagine Stevens Point thinking, oh, they're going to run the football. You threw it, 44-yard pickup, and in this case, 1st and 10. They have the momentum from the score. Could you talk a little bit about your thought process with just over 2 minutes to go in the game?
Yeah, my thought process was to gain some yards on first down, and that particular play was one that we had some success with early in the year against Hudson, and then we'd run it a few times since then, and it's been open, and we haven't connected. It was the play we ran to start the second half against DC Everest. We ran it in the first half of this one, so it was kind of one of those plays like, all right, that's kind of one of our shot plays, and it hadn't really come to, but it's been open, and the kids like it, and Shay likes running it, and Finn likes running it, and Joe likes throwing it. And once we were confident in the protection, and those guys did a really nice job, like you said earlier. So it was just that was my mindset. We got to get something in order to get this thing going. And sometimes we'll run the ball in that situation just to get the blood flowing and stuff. But it was kind of the thought was get a chunk here.
And I thought real fast, both those plays showed confidence in your guys.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's real easy to get in a situation. I mean, you both have been in that situation in a tight spot, whether it is bringing in a quarterback for an injured quarterback or being in a game where it's like you look at the clock and you think, instead of looking at trying to score, then we say, well, if we don't do something, but it seems very proactive. And I imagine that as a coach, that's the mindset you want to have as well for your guys.
Yeah, for sure. And, just with the Jackson, we just have confidence in Jackson. Like and it's a pretty safe throw, and it's the same play we scored on in the first half. So we just went back to it's a day one play. So whether it's throw or run, it's a day one play that we put in. So we have confidence in Jackson that he's going to make a good decision, and he's got a run option off that play as well. So he delivered a nice ball, and we joke with Shay if he was a little bit faster, Jackson could have had a touchdown pass too. But
good quarterback rating though, 1 for 44 yards.
For sure, I heard the student section maybe asking for him back. I don't think Joe was very happy with that, but
so. I always love talking about or asking about like your culture, the program. What is the culture of the program? How
you had a big job to fix though when you took over.
Yeah, you did. Yes, he did. And one of the things, and you're going to certainly answer that question in a second, but one of the things that I thought pointed to your culture was the big plays by maybe the unsung heroes. The finishing of that game when they tied it up, I'd imagine there's a lot of people going, oh boy, here we go. But the thing that I thought was after the game, and it was an interview that I heard with Tegan Rasmus after the game. I know that his position has changed a little bit. I know in his old position, that's a sexy position to play as that outside linebacker, and you get to line up and do things. And I thought he did a really nice job talking about his role and his change and the way he spoke to it. I think said a lot about not only who he is, but what the mindset is of the defense and the team, about the kind of the unselfishness. Can you speak to that as far as how the culture is?
Yeah, it's a do it needs to be done to win football games culture. Hopefully, we try to work hard, we try to have fun, but ultimately you got to do your job. And we talked a lot about that all week, like doing your job and showing that thing and do your job, don't do somebody else's. And we talk about Tegan a lot, sliding down there, at the same time, then Jake Scherer came down and took his spot at outside linebacker, with Cooper coming out late and Cooper getting worked back into the mix and Jackson Hetzer coming and getting – so there's been a lot of guys that have had to sacrifice a little bit. And, when you have your leaders, a guy like Moose that's willing to do that and a guy like Jake that's willing to do that, all those other guys kind of fall in line too. So it hasn't been easy on all of them. It's had to been some conversations and guys, believe they're one thing, but you talk about wanting to do those things, and then you get the real good reinforcer at the last, this week where, hey, we did them all, and then you win a football game. So they get to go back and say, all right, that's a pretty good idea, I guess. And it's not hard to convince any of them, really, though. They want to win. They want to win a lot, and that's what the name of the game is. And so it's a big thing for the culture when guys are willing to do that, for sure, though.
Again, we're talking to Matt Johnson, head football coach at Wausau West High School here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Along the same lines, it feels like you have a lot of guys that are, adding to the success. And something that I noticed on Saturday was that, you had no running backs that had big numbers. But you mentioned the fact that 5 yards per carry, and you had 4 different guys that all provided pretty good production. Not, it's not going to jump off the score sheet. Same thing with your receivers for the year. You got, I think, 4 guys, if I'm not mistaken, that have double-digit catches. It really, you spread it around. It's a year where you don't, I would say, have the superstar numbers, but boy, when you add it all up, it does add up pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah, except for Shea, he gets to score all the touchdowns.
That's true. That's true.
No, you talk about culture and you talk about the unselfishness, and I think it was really summed up on our sidelines. The guy that maybe we don't talk about as much as we should is Miles Waldvogel, and he's obviously our starting running back, and he gets the bulk of the carriers. But as that game went on, we didn't have the ball a lot in the second half, but the conversations were going, hey, I think Cooper seems fresher. We're going to go a little bit with Coop. And I went to Miles and I said, hey, we're going to use Coop a little bit more running the ball. And his response was, Coach, whatever we have to do to win. And that's a pretty rare thing, and I think it speaks for a lot of those guys. You talk about Finn and Asa and Shea and Finn, those guys that we have 2 Finns. I didn't say the same name twice.
Right.
We have 2 Finns. They're all happy when other guys have success, and that's kind of one of the things you talk culture, Coach, is when guys are happy for each other, when you're genuinely there and you are good when somebody else has the success, and they are. You can tell. I have a picture that was taken. My mom took it this week, and on Taden's touchdown, and there's, I think, 5 guys that are elevated and celebrating at the same time when he crosses the end zone, and I think those are just those moments of culture and those things like what Miles said that just kind of speaks to the unselfishness and the whatever it takes. We'll take whoever can get the job done right now, and they all have different roles, and whichever one's kind of hitting, we'll go with that one.
You talked about Miles, and it's not like he was then just sitting around doing nothing when you didn't hand him the football. I don't know how many times in that game I watched him come up and be the first guy to hit that quarterback the 200-pound quarterback with a full head of steam with his 150-pound body. So, yeah, he definitely left it all out there. And I also kind of, when you talk about special teams, the kicking game, you brought it up a little bit too, like to see that now there's somebody else punting, gives Miles a little bit of a break, another opportunity for like a Cole Kennedy, sophomore, to kind of get those opportunities and get that experience. And then talking about your second Finn, talking about him. Now, I mean, I thought one of the biggest plays of the game, and there was lots of them, but one of the biggest ones was the penalty on the touchdown, 15 yards moved back. I mean, that certainly is not a gimme in high school football or in the West kicking games. I thought that was a phenomenal kick. And then to see Finn out on offense now too, like to see his role expand and how he's embraced that. And then the back-to-back kickoffs in the end zone after that. So,
watching him celebrate putting the ball in the end zone is one of my favorite things to do. He's been so rock solid, Finn has, on his extra points, and backing him up to 35 yards certainly challenged him, and we had the one missed field goal from about that distance this year. Don't mean to bring that up. Sorry, Finn. But yeah, that was such a huge play. We talked about that a ton on Monday, too. That's it's a 20-14 game instead of a 21-14 game, and now there's no real decision left for Stevens Point. They have all the confidence in the world. All we got to do is score and kick an extra point. So, great job. And you mentioned Cole Kennedy, which I love Cole, but it's actually Kennedy Yang that was our punter.
Yang,
yes, K-bomb.
And he punted it really well.
Yeah. He had a phenomenal. He had a phenomenal.
The last one was one of his best.
Yes,
that was fantastic.
He'd been doing our scout punting and stepping in there and punting, and he can kick it too. But our program's blessed with some pretty good kicking right now, and so Kennedy just kept kicking. We're finally like, Miles needs a break. Let's get so it's the first time probably an all-conference punter has ever been replaced mid-season the next year. So Kennedy did such a great job and had such an instrumental role in that game.
So much positive. I'm going to ask you the hard question. You're right now 4-2, 3-1 in the conference, good position. 3 weeks left in the regular season. Of course, you want to make a good run. You want to get there, number one, and then make a good run. Where does your team have to continue to take strides? And you said it earlier. If this is as good as it gets, then it's probably not great for Wausau West, even though it's a great win. Where do you have to get better as you head to some Marshfield's always tough. I mean, this is basically the same spot they were in a year ago, going into a must-win against Wausau West. You got River Falls, who's just been spectacular this season, and then, of course, whoever, hopefully, knock on wood, that you get there. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Where do you have to get better?
I mean, everywhere, honestly. Kind of one of the program standards that we have. We just say raise the bar, and that's kind of a daily thing. Get better, get win, lose, or draw. Get better the next day, the next rep, all that kind of stuff. So you continue to take that mentality, but specifically, we're still penalized way too much. We've got to get smarter. We've got to we've had a couple of think we've had at least one 15-yard unsportsmanlike, and that's not what we want. That's not who we want to be, and we're all trying to learn and to grow and get better in those situations and control our emotions and stuff like that. But we've had some holds on the edge. We've got very.
You had a fourth down offside, which always probably makes you grayer than you already are.
Yep. We had
not
two.
To add anything here.
We had two procedural penalties on offense as well. So the penalty stuff has to get cleaned up, and so it's one of those things. If anybody out there has a great way to clean up some of those procedural penalties in practice, I'm all ears. But it's certainly one of those things that we talk about it and we work on it, and guys feel terrible when they do it and jumping off sides and stuff. Everybody's eager to go, but. Yeah, if we don't clean that stuff up, we just make life harder on ourselves. And some of these drives, we're able to overcome them, and some of them we're not. And we have nice physical receivers who like to block, and every now and again they're going to get caught grabbing a jersey or whatever the case may be. But we're going to ask them to keep playing aggressive and keep playing physical, and whatever happens. But the ones that we can really control, the offsides and the false starts and and closing our mouths when it's time to close our mouths and stuff, are the things that we really need to clean up for sure.
Coach, I love defense. And I love what you said that Coach Wimmer pointed out about holding them to half their season average. I love what the defense did at the end of the game against Rapids. Obviously, we'd liked a bunch of things to go different against Rapids, but they were on the field a long time in those last two drives and did a great job. You mentioned a lot of guys on offense up front and that sort of thing. Who are the guys on defense this year? Who are the names we hear like Tegan, but who are some of the other guys?
Yeah, Jamison Kane and Deshaun Paulus kind of come to mind right away. Those guys that play up front, in that defensive line with Tegan, and the unsung heroes. Excuse me. And I thought Jamison played maybe his best football game on Saturday that he's played in his career. So he really stepped up and was in the backfield. And even listening to the interviews after the game where guys, they were all asking me questions. Bowl your defensive line, and then when I went back and watched the film, you don't always see that stuff live. That you had good pressure and whatever else, but those guys were in the backfield constantly and they reset in the line of scrimmage. So I thought those guys did a great job. And then like I said, getting Cooper back and Ty's been rock solid for us in the middle. Ty Teskey all year long. So it just keeps getting better. Our linebacking core as a whole. And I mentioned Alex Cappy earlier. Alex Capitz. That was a guy who was a wide receiver for us all year last year. And I think in our two-a-days we just said, hey, let's try Cap at linebacker. And we moved him to inside line. We moved him outside linebacker, then we moved him inside, then we moved him back outside. And great locker room talk tonight on my way over here. That's the kind of kid that you watch. And we talk about playing hard and playing harder than everyone else, and at least having that be our goal. And you watch Cap in practice, and you watch Cap on the field, and there is an extra level of an effort from that kid. And that's why he's a captain for us, because he just plays. He embraces that. He plays as hard as possible. His arm's falling off half the time on Saturday. The guy just has no quit. So he's definitely a tone setter for us. So it's fun to see him make a big play like he did.
And you talk about that. And again, I think going back to the culture, to have Cooper DuPois come back. I mean, that was wonderful. That wants to be part of it. It's one of those situations where you see Miles Halbert coming out and being such a big factor for your team. I get a sense of you have a lot of guys who really want to be part of something. And I think that's one of the things about high school athletics that's so important, to have this group going together in terms of a common goal. And I kind of see that a lot with this group. Is that something you see as well?
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of these guys play other sports together, and they have fun being together. And that's, like I said, I try to preach that. And there's always that, you can't cross the line to screwing around all the time, but we want to have fun, and we have fun together, and practice should be fun and enjoyable, and work hard when you have to work hard, and get yelled at when you have to get yelled at. But ultimately, hopefully those kids go home and they say, that was a good 2 hours. Like, we had fun together. We get in the weight room, we have fun together. We have a team dinner, we have fun together. So, I hope that's something that the kids want to be a part of and feel. And it's great. You mentioned Miles Halbert, and I should have mentioned him and Aiden Tao are kind of the two names that I left off as I was talking about the defense a little bit. But how great was it to get Miles? And he's been just phenomenal. And it's nice to have a 6'4" corner out there. But he'd played as a freshman. But the Cooper thing coming back out too. Cooper's been with us for a long time. So when he came to me finally and said, "Coach, I can make it happen," this is just a no-brainer. You want a kid like Cooper DuPois around.
Yeah, it was kind of neat. You and I have talked about this leading into the game and a little bit this week about just the whole Saturday thing. I was talking to Jake Whalen before the game, and we were talking about Saturday games, and the only one either one of us could remember was that gosh forsaken game against Spash where we had to go back and play 1 minute and 48 seconds on a Saturday after playing most of it on Friday night. But there was a lot of cool things that went into Saturday as well. There was kind of a bus snafu, so one bus kind of had to be a shuttle for you guys, and I know what it does to your week, right? By the time you get to Saturday night, you usually have about 12 hours of film watched for the week before, and you were just finishing and hadn't watched this week's game. So what was the Saturday experience in a nutshell for you and the kids? It was very cool at the very end. All the fans are gone. There's a bunch of kids left waiting for the bus, laying on the field and just kind of taking it all in. So must have been some neat parts of it as well.
Absolutely. It created new memories for us, or it created a new story for us. We haven't done that. We just kind of spread our week across 5 days instead of 4, like we usually do. So we didn't get on the field a whole lot more, but we spread it out. So it felt like a nice week. You definitely felt like the extra day, though. You felt it didn't really feel weird until Friday morning. You're like, what do we do tonight? Oh yeah, we have practice tonight. This is a weird feeling. You're right, and then nothing ever truly goes smooth. I don't know if you've ever been in the coaching world. There's never really a week that's just smooth to the finish line. So why wouldn't there be a little bus snafu? And thanks to Brittany Tesh for getting us back and forth there. But that moment of just kind of laying on the field and my guy Aiden laying on the field and whatever else. It's just the cool things that we get to go back and talk about. And it was a fun group. So the Saturday experience was fun. I don't ever want to do it again.
We talked earlier too. It was kind of interesting because we didn't have the greatest start to that game with the way we received the kick, what we did on offense, what we did on defense, and the crowd was similar as well. Like the crowd was pretty quiet at the beginning of the game too. It was kind of like everyone had to wake up. So maybe next time we'll play at 3 or 5. Maybe I give everybody a chance to get dialed in.
I'd appreciate that.
What about Marshfield? Went to that beautiful new place 2 years ago and had a really nice night. Had a lot of fun 2 years ago. They came to Tom Field and kind of turned the table last year. And as I said, for Marshfield, it's kind of a similar situation. They're in a situation they got to find some W's. But boy, I mean, it's always such a good program. It's always a great challenge, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't know why. Are they 1-5 or are they 2-4? I'm not even sure. It doesn't matter because that's not what I see.
2-4.
Yeah,
but 2-1 in the conference.
Correct, and it's not what I see when I watch them. They're tough. They're really good on offense. They can run the football. Their running back is, I think, as good as we've seen, for sure. And their fullback is a big, strong guy. And obviously, we showed a little bit of a weakness in finishing tackles and when we were in positions and these guys will run right through those tackles as well. And then they're opportunistic in the pass game, and they're a good football team, and they had a really tough schedule, and we've seen that story before, right? You play a team that has played some good teams, and all of a sudden, they get back in their conference and they feel like they're back on level playing ground, and we don't believe we're better or worse than anybody we play. Every game, you look at the Rapids game, you look at the Point game, those would have been predicted a lot differently. But for us, it's every game we get there, and we're going to get we're just not a team that blows people out. We don't do that. I don't know why, but we just don't. And we'll play down to the wire if we have to, and that, I feel like that's what it's going to be on Friday again as well.
Yeah, historically, Coach Gadel always does a really nice job for them, and they seem to always have athletes, right? And they seem to do things on defense that drive you nuts from an offensive standpoint. What is the first thing you stop on defense this week? Like, obviously they have the good running back or whatever, but what is are they going to try to attack the edges? Are they coming up the middle? What is their offense this year?
Variety, but we kind of look where number 26 is, and that's kind of they start and finish with him a little bit, and he'll line up in different spots, and he'll line up in the Wildcat, and he'll line up all over the place. So finding him and identifying where he is. They'll formationally change a lot of things. They'll go under center. They'll go out of the eye, and then they'll obviously be in the gun and stuff too. So just a ton of different variety, and they just do something really well at everything. So our defensive coaches do an incredibly good job of preparing our guys as far as when they're in this, you can look for this, and this, and then we rep it really hard all week, obviously. So it looked good today. It looked good. Our defense was flying around and identifying things, but. It starts and ends, and then they have big, tall receivers, and they like to throw it up to those two guys. And fortunately, like we said, we have Miles out there and Taden, who's not a small guy either. So we think we can match up out there, and they've been doing a nice job.
Well, we'll look forward to being out there on Friday night, right here on WXCO. appreciate you coming on by, and congrats on Saturday, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Matt Johnson, football coach of Wausau West High School. We'll be right back after the news for hour number 2 here on WXCO. And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And again, you can also get the show by going to YouTube.com. Go to YouTube.com and the 98.9 WXCO channel as well. With Jason Foster, I am Chad Holmes, and it's time now for our student athlete guest for this week. And this week, we're very happy to welcome from Wausau East High School, senior Ian Stahl. Ian, thanks for popping on over.
Nice to meet you guys.
Absolutely, and had a chance to see you in action the last couple of weeks, both at Mosinee and against Medford last week. I want to actually talk about the Mosinee game because the day before that game, I went over to practice over at East, and then I was just hanging out, talking to the coaches, and you didn't practice that day. You were banged up. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, I did not think you were going to play just the way you were moving around, and I thought the game against Mosinee was a leadership game because I thought you played very well against Mosinee. It was a tough night generally for the Lumberjacks, but could you talk about the mindset playing hurt? Because I thought you did something there that I don't know whether it helped against Medford or not, but you were going to play in that football game, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I was just thinking my team really needed me that game, even though we lost, but it's okay. So, yeah, I was just thinking my team really needed me and that I'm a big asset for the team, and the guys, you need that leadership on the team. If you're hurt, you can still play through it, and yeah.
So knowing it was a tough loss, and it was a goofy night, right? That one was a Thursday night. It was raining and storming, and the big delay. You were dinged up. So there's a lot of probably variables that go into it. But you made, I would say Mosinee, obviously a really good team, right? You guys got them last year, so they were probably really geared up to beat you guys. And then you go into a Medford team, who's probably a little bit down this year, but had been playing really good football and still probably considers themselves in the running for a conference championship. What changed so much from the Mosinee week to the Medford week that you guys had such a great performance and had a great win last week against Medford?
Well, we just had a lot of team bonding that week, and I think that really pushed us forward and made us a better team.
What types of things did you guys do?
So we had, after that Mosinee loss, it was kind of hard, so we all just got together and had like pizza, watched film, and watched like what we could do better for the Medford game. And then on the Thursday before the Medford game, we did team bonding and did like your impersonation of your coaches and which one was the funniest, which was good. And then team dinner on Thursday as well.
Who did you impersonate?
We did Coach Kong and
all right.
my group. So
Something Coach Kramer said to me before the game against Medford that he had confidence because your guys, despite it's tough to go through a stretch where you're not winning and you're banged up. You had a number of injuries during that stretch, but he said that you came out, the team as a whole came out, still had a lot of great energy, was still having fun coming to practice and doing the games. How important was having that positive mentality to get through a tough stretch in your season?
It's very important because you just got to get through like the 4-game losing streak we had. It's just important to be positive and really think you can win every single game and win out and make the playoffs.
Let me ask you about the quarterback change. You had a young quarterback in Cam Rye who had his first start against Medford. How does that change the mentality in the huddle? How did it change anything in that game? Because he came out and I thought played very solid football for your team. Having a new quarterback, having a young quarterback, having a sophomore quarterback who had not started before, did everybody take maybe a little bit more responsibility on their shoulders?
Yeah, the seniors on the offense took a lot of responsibility for it. Just if he made a mistake, just hyping him up and telling him he's okay, and that it's all be good. We got his back.
You've talked about the team bonding and the leadership and your role in it. Who are the other leaders on the team? Like what are the names of the guys who fill those roles for the Lumberjacks this year?
I would say Caden Meverden, Logan Govinsky, Aiden Kildee, Cash Ryan maybe, and yeah, just our captains, Jackson Gumbert, and that's it.
What's a quality that you see in your teammates that helps you? Because we talk about leadership, and you're part of that leadership group as a senior. But for the other guys, what's maybe an example of something they've done that said to you that got you going in a positive way? An example, maybe what's something one of these guys that you respect on your team did?
Just telling me to like see if I get hyped up about a call or like the other team's being chippy with their shots, and they tell me to calm down. That just gets me going and calms me down a little bit. But yeah.
Ian, I know you're a lot of success on the football field. Great season last year, great season this year. What other sports do you play?
I just play baseball, and that's it. Yeah.
What position you play on the diamond?
Center field, and then I pitch sometimes, but I'll pitch more this year because last year we had a bunch of seniors that would pitch, and I wasn't really in the rotation. But
what's your favorite sport?
Whatever season I'm in, that's my favorite sport. So right now football, and then it'll be.
What is
baseball.
it that you like about football? Because you say you play baseball and football; those are different sports. I think there's a very different in terms of physicality and the such. What is it about the football side that you enjoy doing?
Just like your teammates and everything, and how hype you guys get during the game, and the team bonding you can get during football. It's just. And I like the contact, too. It's fun to hit. It's fun to be active all the time.
So a lot of time for baseball, a lot of time for football in the fall. What do your winters look like? What do you do with your extra time in the winter?
I try to, get a job and also lift. I lift sometimes and hang out with some friends.
Again, we're joined by Ian Stahl from Wausau East High School, our student-athlete guest this week on the Big High School Sports Show. When you're not on the field, whether on the gridiron or on the ball diamond, when you're not working, when you're not studying, what do you like to do for fun? Maybe to get away from it all in terms of a lot of the other activities you're involved in.
I like to hang out with family, friends, go on vacation, play video games, obviously, and yeah, just be outside sometimes.
They all like video games, don't they?
Yes,
Every week we hear the video games. What's your favorite class in school?
I would say probably gym.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What's your do you know what you're doing next year yet? Do you have a plan, or still up in the air a little bit?
I'm still looking at if colleges want me to play for their school, or maybe I would go and get an apprenticeship after school and become an electrician. I'm trying to be.
What sport would you want to continue to play at the next level? Do you have opportunities? Have you heard anything about baseball or football?
Yeah, I've heard some football stuff, but baseball I'm trying to get into more because I think it would be less wear and tear on my body.
With baseball and football now with Wausau East, because Wausau East now is in the Great Northern Conference in football. You're in the Wisconsin Valley Conference in baseball. What's your favorite rival on the football field, and what's your favorite rival in baseball?
I'd say Mosinee is my favorite rival in football, and then baseball would be Wausau West. Yeah.
How is it? And obviously, Chad asked your favorite, and you gave a great answer, as most athletes do. What's it like being coached differently in those different? Like I know Coach Winter, and he probably has a different style than Coach Kramer, and the other coach you mentioned. Did you say Coach Kong before?
Yeah, Coach Kong.
Okay, so what is it like? Is that enjoyable? Like having different coaches with different styles? Is that like kind of develop you into a better athlete and maybe even a better young man?
Yeah, it helps me a lot because obviously Winter's low, chill, and then Kramer's high up there. He'll get hype and stuff, but yeah, it helps me a lot.
But between being hyped and chill, I'm kind of curious about this because in football you think about guys, you see the old videos of players banging their head against a locker with their helmet on and stuff like that. Is it better on the baseball field to have maybe a little bit of a calmer feel as you go into the game as compared to football? Do you have to have a different mentality between the two sports?
Yeah, I think you would because baseball if you just get in your head a little bit, like it's like every sport, but baseball's a little more mental. If you get in your head, then you're just not going to play good, and you'll strike out, you'll make an error.
What baseball do you play in the summer?
Legion baseball, so for the Bulldogs, the Wausau Post End Bulldogs.
Okay, so kind of some East kids, West kids,
Yeah.
and local. So who, like, when you look towards the baseball season and who you guys are, what is your – do you – like when you play Wausau West in baseball, you played with those guys during Legion. Are those guys – do you consider those guys your friends and that's kind of a friend of the rivalry? Is it kind of that's the one you want to win more than other ones, or how does that play out?
Yeah, I would want to win it more than other ones, but they're still my friends, and I get along with the guys on the Wausau West baseball team.
The old adage that you like to beat your brother more than anybody else, even though it's like, and that brings up the point, do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers or 3 brothers. No, yeah. Let me think. 3 brothers. No, 4 brothers. 4 brothers and 1 sister. I was thinking. For a
Where
little
do
bit.
you stand in this group? Are they older or younger?
I'd say middle because I got
You
2
better go
older.
home and talk to your siblings here.
Yeah, my brother's in the Marines.
Oh.
My sister's in college, I think. Yeah, she's like 23 or something.
Okay.
And then I have a younger brother that's a sophomore, and then 2 younger brothers. So,
Are your younger brothers involved in sports?
my little brother David is, and Mick. Yeah, they're both involved, but David's just in baseball, mixing basketball and stuff. Baseball.
So this week, game against Merrill, right? Kind of a team who's been playing really well. You guys had a great win last week against a tough opponent. What's this week been like preparing for Merrill?
Just watching film with all the team, like defense getting right, because they're obviously way different than Medford. They pass more than Medford, and just looking at film and hitting in practice a little bit and getting ready for that Merrill game.
What's your sense now getting that win against Medford? There's still lots of work to do to get to, I think, the point you want to be in, which is to return to the playoffs. But do you have this sense now that after last week that goal is a lot closer than maybe it was a week ago?
Yeah. I think if we have the right mindset, we can win every single game.
How important is that? Because last year, making the playoffs was such a big thing for Wausau East football after some of the struggles they had. Do you feel like it's important to keep that momentum for the program to find a couple of more wins coming down the stretch to get to the postseason?
Yes, I do. I think making the playoffs 2 years in a row would be really good for Wausau East and get them a little bit more recognition from everybody else and make them respect them more.
I'd have to think one of the exciting things right now about the conference is there still isn't a clear front runner, right? Like nobody's undefeated anymore. There's a bunch of teams at 3-1 and 2-2 kind of all in that mix. You guys get a good win this week and you're kind of right back in the middle of that mix. Obviously Chad mentioned that last week's win put you into that position, but is that kind of the mindset? Like, has Coach talk about that at this point, the sky's the limit. You keep winning games and all of your goals are still in play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the conference is still up for grabs, but we just got to play at a high level and not let anything get to us.
What do you think your team has to do better coming down the stretch? We were 2/3 of the way through the regular season. Now you got 3 more regular season games. What are the areas that you think your team has to be better at in order to be successful in the final third of the season?
We got to stay positive. Our offense has to get going a little bit. Our defense has been doing good for us, and just our offense has to get going.
I feel like earlier in the year, you guys kind of relied more heavily on the big play, right? The long pass or the big runs. Is that still the case, or do you guys feel like you're getting better at sustaining drives and staying on the field longer on offense and maybe not putting your defense in those situations?
I think we're getting better at staying on the field more and not just looking for those big plays so that we can actually take time off the clock and score and not let the other team get as much time as they usually get.
Personally, do you feel like you're becoming a bigger factor in the offense as the season goes on as well? Because I think the last 2 weeks, what you've been able to accomplish carrying the football, I think you had about 80-some yards against Mosley, then well over 100 yards last week. Do you sense your role growing in this offense as the season's gone on?
Yeah, I think my O-line's really helping me, though, like getting to that step farther into becoming more of the offense and helping the offense out.
Who are some of your offensive linemen that have been helping you out the last few weeks?
I would say Eli, Logan, well, really just our whole line, to be honest. Yeah.
Actually, as you were talking about Cam and the situation, you guys are actually in a very similar situation to DC Everest. They had their starting quarterback go down early in the season, and they brought in a sophomore as well who had no experience. And at the same time, when they did that, their running backs carries went up, yards per game went up, and his role. So you guys are actually in a very similar situation to that. Do you feel the added pressure or responsibility to that, or is it just you're going to take whatever comes your way, the number of carries, and you're just going to do whatever it is that you're asked?
Yeah, I'm just going to do whatever I'm asked. I'm not going to feel too much pressure about having a new QB. I think he can lead us, take us forward, and help us win games.
Anything else before we ask our final question?
No, just congratulations on a great win last week. I think that has set you guys up to kind of finish this season really strong. So good luck down the stretch. Look forward to seeing how you guys play, and good luck.
Thank you.
We have one final question we always ask of our student-athlete guests, especially those that are multi-sport athletes and especially those who are seniors. Based on what you've learned since you started high school and started playing sports in high school, if you were to give a piece of advice to a freshman or a sophomore just starting their journey when it comes to high school sports at Wausau East, based on what you've learned, what piece of advice would you give that young person?
To just take advantage of everything you've got. Like, it goes by really fast, and you just stay in the gym, keep working, get better at what you're doing, and don't take it for granted.
Absolutely. Well, Ian Stahl, congrats on some really good performances recently. Best of luck coming up on Saturday over in Merrill. And again, best of luck as you get to baseball as well. But thanks for coming on by.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's Ian Stahl from Wausau East, our senior and our student-athlete guest this week here on the program. Coming up next, we will look ahead, week number 7 of the high school football season. That's coming up as we continue the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO.
So, how are the kids?
Well, Emily made the honor roll.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, we're really proud of her. Tyler, on the other hand, though,
What's going on?
he's been moody lately, just feeling down and not like himself.
Oh, we've been there. Nick was struggling last spring. He was so anxious and stressed.
Really? What helped?
Well, he joined the soccer team, and ever since, he's been a lot happier. He has more energy, he's less stressed, and he's definitely in a better mood at home. It's made a huge difference.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad he's getting out of the house, he's getting some exercise, and he's off his phone for once. It's been good for his mental health.
Sounds like it's been good for your mental health, too.
Participating in Wisconsin high school sports improves students' physical and mental health. Encourage your son or daughter to get involved. This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Are you an enthusiastic sports fan? Want to have fun and get in on the action?
Heck, yes. That'd be awesome.
Have great attention to detail? Want to stay active?
Definitely.
Want to give back to the student athletes in your community?
Obviously, yes.
Then you'd make an excellent high school sports official. We need more officials in Wisconsin, because with no high school officials, there are no high school sports. Sign up today at highschoolofficials.com.
And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, and again on YouTube, youtube.com and the 98.9 WXCO channel. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, and again, a nice Wausau night. We got Wausau West coach Matt Johnson, Wausau East running back Ian Stahl, and as you said earlier, it was going into last week, probably a week where both games were looking pretty tough for the home teams over at Tom Field, but good wins for both, and then both nice jobs here tonight. It's always great to hear from a coach and also a student athlete.
Yeah, I thought they both did a great job, both on the field last weekend as well as tonight. And it's just a reminder, right, as we start to look forward to these games this week and the ones down the stretch, is anything can happen, right? Because
Right.
I think we both felt that those were going to be tough wins for the Lumberjacks and the Warriors last week, and they both pulled them off. And not only did they pull them off, but what it does to your season outlook at that point, right? Like, it is completely different. I mean, West went from, if they lose that one, they got to find those wins that are going to get them into the playoffs, to winning that game and still having hopes of winning a conference championship. And then kind of the same thing for East. They don't win that one, and it's probably you can take a lot of your goals off the board. And they have a great win against a how many time conference champion, and that completely changes their outlook and kind of probably changes the way they practice this week and the spring in their steps. So great wins for both programs for sure.
I thought the East game last week shows again how if you are able to battle through the downward parts of your season, they had been banged up really bad. They got a couple linemen back, and all of a sudden things changed significantly last week. It's a short year and also a long year. Because if you let a couple of losses get you down, then it's going to turn into where it doesn't turn around. But if you keep plugging away, then something like that happened Friday for East occurs. Because, again, like you said, Medford had beaten an undefeated Lakeland team the week before. So they looked like they were starting to build some of these young players. And for East to come out and win that game, really, really impressive. And for West, I mean, we talk about the difference one game makes for a lot of these teams. 2-2, 3-1, 1-3, whatever it may be. I mean, it's such a thin line this year. And I think generally in a lot of these conferences, we talked about the fact that there's some different teams that have risen to the top of some of these conferences. It seems like this year, generally, a lot of these conferences, there is a thinner line between a team that could be battling for a conference championship or a team that could miss the playoffs altogether.
Yeah, the haves and the have-nots. And I think when you look at a conference like the GNC, where traditionally the enrollments of those schools are a little smaller, the numbers in their programs are a little lower. We talked about this a lot last year with Mosinee and some of these other schools with injuries, right?
Yeah.
Like you lose one guy, maybe he plays a big player on both sides of the ball, and what it does to your depth. I look at the Mosinee Tomahawk game from last week, and we know that Tomahawk has some outstanding players, but it appears to me by looking at stats and just having seen the highlights on TV last week that Mosinee found something, right? Like Tomahawk's got some really good players, but my bet is there are some spots on that field where they don't have as much depth as maybe somebody else did, and you can kind of take advantage of that. And then as players get injured or get healthy, kind of like you said about Wausau East, that makes a big difference. You talk about Wausau West. What a difference having a player like Cooper DePoit back. Wasn't there before. And is one player going to make that big of a difference? Maybe not necessarily his own effort, but I think Coop's doing a great job. Mm-hmm. But I think, like Coach Johnson had said, how it shifted people around on defense, right? I mean, I think offensively he gave him a shot in the arm. He definitely has a different style of back than their other two guys, which I think is good. Being fresh and healthy is probably one of the biggest things. But putting him in on defense and the dominoes that kind of, it just gave other kids opportunities in other spots. And in that case, they stepped up and did really good things.
One of the interesting things about Cooper DePoit the first few weeks is he came on, and when you come on, you have to work your way back in. But they put him on special teams, and he has been incredible on special teams. Yeah. And that's really been, I think, a major factor for Wausau West in a couple of these games. We talked a bit about field position. I mean, it just takes one big return. We've seen this. I mean, the game between East and Mosinee a couple of weeks ago, Mosinee kept getting good punt returns. When you put a kid like Cooper DePoit in on your punt coverage, you can save 15, 20 yards almost every time. And he has been just stellar, I thought, on special teams, which I don't think he played quite as much of last season. I don't remember it as much. But he came on. You want to get him involved. One area you can get involved in is special teams. And, boy, it makes a big difference in the game. And sometimes we overlook that factor. We think, oh, defense, offense, boy, those special teams plays are just massive.
Right. I feel like in the show every week we find one spot where we can talk about something that's been happening in high school that applies to Division I or to the NFL and from a college standpoint. And I mean, look at the Packer game last week. As maddening as that game was to watch, what role did special teams play in that game, right?
Yeah.
Blocked and returned extra point, 3-point swing, and then the field position the Cowboys had down the stretch by outstanding returns. So yeah, huge part of the game. And this time of year, even though it's ridiculously warm, but it starts to get darker. Your
keep telling us that.
Yeah, your teams are dinged up a little bit, so you're probably doing less contact than you usually do. And a lot of coaches are trying to get off the field a little earlier. So where do you cut back? And oftentimes it's that special teams area that ends up getting cut back a little bit. And we all know what a huge role those play. So maybe that's a big part of it. Is those teams that are still spending the time on it, it pays big dividends on Friday and Saturday.
Well, let's look ahead to week number 7. It'll be another warm weekend of high school football. Maybe the last one, but who knows these days. But in Wisconsin Valley Conference, you have the first place team, the DC Everest Evergreens. Their conference record will not change this week, but it is a crossover that does count towards playoff. Well, they've qualified for the playoffs already, but it also, every game matters now with this new playoff system as well because of the seeding aspects of it. But DC Everest 4-0 in the conference, 4-2 overall, hosting Chippewa Falls, who are 2-4, 1-3. A year ago, DC Everest in the crossover lost at Chippewa Falls. Chippewa Falls is 2-4, 1-3 in the Big Rivers. They did win over Superior last week, 35-0. But you look at the teams they faced. I mean, the 3 weeks before, Rice Lake, River Falls, and New Richmond, all very good football teams. Their other loss came to Stevens Point, a game that was a one-score game until the fourth quarter when Smash pulled away. So for DC Everest, again, with a sophomore quarterback, I'm curious because DC Everest had those 2 tough games in the non-conference to start off. This is, again, another non-conference game. I'm curious to see the Evergreens, how they play against one of these Western Big Rivers teams when they struggled against them the first 2 games.
Yeah, Coach Johnson, when he was off the air and getting ready to leave, said that he knows a lot about this new playoff structure. I don't know nearly as much as he does, but in talking with him, what I do understand about it is your opponents and what level they are, right? So because it's all predetermined now, D1, D2. So right off the bat, Chippewa Falls is for sure a D1 team. So beating them it's a really important game for them. And then it matters who they've played and lost to in that conference. River Falls and New Richmond and Rice Lake are the lower seat, right? The smaller division. So that will impact a little bit. But historically, I think Chippewa Falls has had the upper hand on the Evergreens. Like they've played them even before we went to this new conference. They had been playing them non-conference weeks 1 or 2 for a few years before we went into this conference. And I think if you took the last 5 years, I think that Chippewa Falls might actually have the winning record against them. So there might be a mental component to this game as well. And Chippewa Falls knows they gave Spash all they could handle, and Spash obviously competing for a share of the conference championship. So not a gimme by any means for the Evergreens this week.
Friday night, right here on 98.9 WXCO, it will be Wausau West at Marshfield, 6:35 pregame, 7 o'clock for the opening kickoff. Warriors have moved into second place in the WVC, 1 game behind Everest. Wausau West is 3-1, 4-2 overall. Marshfield 2-4, 2-1 in the conference. They're tied for third with Stevens Point, so they could actually move into second place in the conference with a win. And also, again, I said this earlier, this is exactly where Marshfield was a year ago. They went into Tom Field, upset Wausau West, and that ultimately got them into the playoffs. They probably know this is a must game for Marshfield. And for Wausau West, you don't want to give up that momentum that you had against Stevens Point, and they've won 2 games in a row, left to make it 3 in a row. Again, this is, I think, a rather intriguing matchup.
Yeah, I do. I would agree. I think this is a really tough matchup for the Warriors, and I think Marshfield would think that Wausau West is really tough for them. This might be the game of the week, really, in the Wisconsin Valley Conference as far as how things line up moving forward. My reference of Wausau West has been, this is my 14th year back in Wausau and being around the program, and with the exception of a couple games in those 14 years, there's never been a blowout. I mean, there's been a couple blowouts.
2 years ago,
I was going to say, actually, and then the last 2 times we've gone to Marshfield, they've been blowouts. But prior to that, those games are great battles. And Marshfield they're always tough. like we've said, well coached, always very athletic. So I think this is going to be a great game, great matchup. I think the fact that it's at Marshfield, obviously maybe advantage Marshfield, so it should be a great one.
I think the Wausau West has to stop the run. Yeah. I think that's been a bit of an issue last couple of weeks. They got to get off the field. You can't afford it. The last 3 games, in fact, Wausau West, I don't have numbers for time of possession, but I think they've been dominated against DC Everest, Wisconsin Rapids, and Stevens Point. You got to have a little more balance in it. If you can't stop Hayden Carlson, who's averaging, 8.1 yards per carry, has 797 yards this season, they got to find a way to get the defense off the field a little bit more.
Yeah, I think obviously there's a lot of things that go into stopping the run. A lot of it's X's and O's. I know they've changed up some things and moved some guys around, brought in some different guys in different positions. So I think all of those things are positive and help. The thing that stuck out to me last Saturday against Spash was our pad level in our tackling. I felt like we were really high. Like when you watched on the other side of the ball, Spash did a really nice job of tackling low. The first guy in tackling low, wrapping up, and then there was a lot of really tough second hits in that game against the Warriors. Our running backs, receivers kind of took some pretty big hits. And on the flip side of that, I thought the Warriors were tackling high. So there's a lot of yards after contact for Spash, and we didn't have as many of those big hits. Those are things you can fix. Those are things I would imagine that Coach Wimmer, Coach Whalen saw on film this week and are working on changing and implementing. But I think pad level and just that overall sense of tackling probably going to be a big emphasis for the Warriors this week.
One thing I'm also curious about is when teams play Wausau West, at what point do they start to try to think Shea Jones is their guy? Because, he's been open so many times in that touchdown that won the game. He was so wide open, and we've seen that a lot. I have not seen a tight end that has been the focal point of a pass game like it has been for Wausau West and getting them open. I mean, you got to say great credit to Coach Johnson and their design because they're finding ways to get Shea Jones wide open, but at some point, these defenses, I would think, have to make some adjustments as well.
Well, first off, it's not even just this year, right? He did the same thing last year. Now he doesn't probably have quite as many as he's going to end up with this year, but he was wide open a lot last year, too. I will say this as a defensive guy. I'll use Spash as an example. And Spash is different now, different head coach, so their offense is a little bit different. But Spash has always been phenomenal at running screens, right?
Yeah.
You know they're going to do it. Yeah. You know they're going to do it on 3rd and 11, and you can practice it all week. You can watch it on film. You can scream out from the sideline on 3rd and 11, watch screen, watch whoever, what number it is, watch which side. You know exactly what's going to happen before it happens, and they still gain 15 yards on 3rd and 11. So even when you know it's coming, it's tough. And I would say probably the next hardest thing after a screen is that tight end, right? We run these spread formations, and you got doubles or twins open or trips and all these different things. And no matter how many receptions your receivers have, you have to go out and defend it, right? You can't just say they're probably going to pass to the tight end, so we're going to double team the tight end. That's a really tough thing. So obviously Shea's a really good athlete, so that helps. He's a really big target. That helps. The speed this year has kind of really stuck out to me, but it's hard to give that much attention in passing situations to a tight end because every extra person you put to the tight end leaves that opportunity for the big shot downfield to those other guys. But I agree with you, too. I kind of joked with Coach Johnson on Monday, like, how many more times are we going to let the 6'5" kid run wide open down the middle of the field?
Eau Claire North and Stevens Point. North 2-4, 1-2 in the conference. Spash 4-2, 2-1 in the conference. I wouldn't want to be Eau Claire North this week. Last 2 weeks have been tough ones for Spash, but we saw. I was very impressed with, and I know you said that maybe Wausau West needed to get the pads down a little bit, but at the same time, those are some strong runners that Stevens Point has.
Yeah, and it really starts with their quarterback. I mean, I think the one advantage that West had last week, maybe we scored too early, but the great thing was the kickoff, right? That they had 80 yards to go in order to score because a lot of their success leading up to that point had come from running the football, and at that point they couldn't run it anymore the way they had to with the amount of time left on the clock. But yeah, there's Eau Claire North is going to wake up on Saturday morning and be sore would be my guess.
And an interesting game because Wisconsin Rapids has played better football. Eau Claire Memorial had a chance to beat Eau Claire North a couple weeks ago. And for both teams, 0-6, looking for that first win. Rapids at Eau Claire Memorial. And again, we talked to Mike Krenz earlier in the season. He knew that this was a big job, that for Wisconsin Rapids football, that it was going to be a building job. But you do see the progress the last 2 weeks, don't you?
Yeah, I think they're definitely trending in the right direction, and not just from we were ahead at the end of the first half or we played them tough. I think those have all been building blocks. It wasn't just a one-off, and it wasn't when they played Eau Claire North or whatever. It was against teams who are still competing for playoff spots and conference championships in West and Marshfield. And so I think they have to go into this game with a lot of confidence. And on the flip side of that, I've watched Eau Claire Memorial play really good football this year at times against some really good teams, including Hudson and well, I'm going to blanket a little bit there, but they seem to be well coached, and they seem to play good as a team together. They just don't seem to have maybe some of the athletes that the other teams that they were hoping to beat, like in Eau Claire North. Eau Claire North has better athletes. I feel like Eau Claire Memorial is maybe better coached. No offense to Eau Claire North. I don't know their coaches, but they seem to play better as a team. Like, I thought they competed against Hudson. Didn't beat them. The game wasn't in jeopardy, but stayed in the game for a long time. And I just feel like Eau Claire Memorial is right on the cusp of kind of breaking through and winning. So I think for either one of these programs, I think it's going to be a good game. I think they've both been competing like crazy, and I'll be very interested to see who pulls it out. And more importantly, I think I'm going to be interested to see what the score of this game is.
I think two things about this. Number one, Eau Claire Memorial last season, I never saw a team that looked like they wanted to tackle less. Those games, they did not want to play what I would call tough football at all. This year, they look like they have taken a major stride forward in that realm. Number two, it looks like the floor of the conference has risen this year. That you see, these two teams are winless, but they're much better at the bottom of this league playing competitive football, and it makes the conference, I think, a lot tighter generally.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the floor has risen, and we'll see what it is down the stretch when we get to that Everest Spash matchup. But I feel like maybe the ceiling isn't quite as high this year either. I think
some of those graduating seniors from last year.
Exactly.
Really
DC
good.
Everest was the cream of the crop. Spash gave them everything they could handle for a conference championship, and I think both of those teams, just from a graduation standpoint, maybe aren't quite as elite as maybe they were last year. So I do think that. Correct me if I'm wrong, I know for sure Eau Claire Memorial had a new coach last year. Is this year 2 for him, or is it?
I believe so.
Right. So it looks like they've made that gain from year 1 to year 2.
And last year was a late change, I believe, too.
Yep.
That really threw
the coach went back to Superior and all that.
It was later in the off season, so that made for a difficult.
So I would agree. I mean, we've watched both more so Eau Claire North and Eau Claire Memorial be better football teams this year, and I think you're right. That's good for the conference.
Great Northern Conference, and again, always interesting. GNC Tomahawk will try to bounce back from their first loss of the season, 5-1, 3-1 in the league. Travel to Medford, and now for Medford, 2-4 overall, 2-2 in the conference. For Medford, it becomes a significant game as they try to work their way to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the thing that sticks out to me in this matchup is what beat Tomahawk last week against Mosinee was throwing the football, right? And Medford certainly last week showed very little, if any, ability. Zero ability to throw the football. And I do believe that defensively we would have to think, just based on what we've seen, talked to, and heard to this point, that Tomahawk's defense is probably better than Wausau East. I mean, Wausau East played tough last week, had big turnovers and all that, but Tomahawk in their big wins against good programs this year, the defense has really kind of shown through that they play that toughness. Last week, maybe they got exposed a little bit in the passing game. Probably not going to be the case this week. So this should be an interesting matchup.
It's been odd for Tomahawk because their close games have been at home. They had the overtime game against Wittenberg. They had a 1-point game against East, and they lost against Mosinee. 2 weeks ago, they went to Rhinelander, killed them. They went to Anago, killed them. I mean, sometimes it's just odd. I mean, I don't know. It probably means less than zero generally, but it's just sometimes things you notice. And I thought Tomahawk has gone on the bus and done pretty well so far this year. You got Rhinelander at Mosinee. And Mosinee right now, I saw them 2 weeks ago against East. They played very well in that game. They obviously did a nice job. Treve Stoffel, 13 of 17, more than 200 yards. Mitchell Micklick was, as you said, the big target. So throwing the ball well, 99 yards as well on the ground. It looks like this Mosinee team, after a couple of hiccups, are starting to find their way. And Rhinelander, I don't know. I mean, it's like they have not had much consistency so far this year.
Or last year. I mean, I feel like that question mark just kind of looms over that program.
They're always a pretty good program, though.
Right.
You always think, you always feel like they should be near the top of that conference.
Right. And with their win 2 weeks ago against East in convincing style, right, went up early, and then wasn't it 28-14 at the end?
I mean, then they just laid such an egg against Tomahawk that really was like, that one's like, what? And then last week they come back and against a struggling Antigo. So it's like, but the East game was like, hey, this is something you're building on. And then to be at home and to lose by such a big margin was a little bit odd in my mind.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is a statement game for Mosinee, and it'll be interesting to see what that statement is. I guess based on how they've been playing, seems like they are heading in the right direction and going there quickly. Rhinelander has a lot to prove, so we'll see how that one plays out.
Lakeland at Antigo, and for Lakeland, again, everything was hunky-dory a couple of weeks ago. Then they lose that 2-point game at Medford, and then last week, I don't know what you call it, a surprise, but maybe a little bit that was a 20-point game.
Yeah.
Merrill went up to Minocqua and came from behind and won at 34-14. So now Lakeland needing a W. It's how quick things can turn around. We've seen it in the past where teams start 4-0, 2-0 in their conference, and then they don't make the playoffs because, those first two games, while they don't count in the same way of getting to the playoffs. So, but they have Antigo, who's been struggling just mightily right now. So it's probably a pretty good spot for a team that's coming off back-to-back losses.
Right. It's, definitely a get-right game, and one you have to win, knowing that this is probably the one on the one on the schedule that looks like it's going to go that direction just about no matter what.
Every other game can go either way.
Right, exactly, and that's what they have left. So the 2 weeks following that up, I think the next one's probably the most intriguing to me.
Yeah, Saturday I will be at Jay Stadium in Merrill. 1:05 pregame, 1:30 kickoff right here on 98.9 WXCO as the Wausau East Lumberjacks take on the Merrill Blue Jays. East now 2-4 overall, 1-3 in the conference. Merrill 4-2 overall, 3-1 in the conference. Let's start with Merrill because, again, we touched on it earlier. I mean, it's 4.5 games where they have been stellar, to be honest with you. I mean, to go to Mosinee and have a chance to win and then win the other games, this is a team that is really, again, the word surprising is not probably fair to them, but they have really become a consistently good football team, haven't they?
Yeah, the reality is they're playing great football.
Yeah.
And they're playing great football in a conference that isn't new to them, right? Like they've took their lumps for a fair amount of time. Coach Wadzinski's been there I don't know how many years now.
He's done such a nice job building this program. And again, real fast, a little stability. It goes such a long way, doesn't it?
Well, I think it means so much to the players and the players' families, right? Am I coming out or not coming out? I know what I'm going to get when I come out. I know what the experience is. I know we're going to compete, and I know the program is going to make us into better young men. So I think that's a huge piece. I think you make a great point there. And I think on the flip side of it, when you look at Wausau East and how close the Tomahawk game was and how much praise we've lauded over Tomahawk, rightfully so, that they've definitely earned. But that game certainly could have gone either way, was close right down to the end. And you then tack on a win against Medford, and they kind of seem like they're not going to end up with as good a record as they had last year's. We're already at that point, I think. Correct?
Yeah, I think weren't they 6-3 in the regular season a year ago, 6-4 overall.
Yep. So they're not going to get there, and they too graduated a lot of people. But I do feel like they're playing the type of football that they played last year, where they were in every single game in that conference, which included a win over Mosinee and a win over Merrill, right?
Last
in
second field goal.
and a really close one. So I feel like they're kind of working their way back to being that sort of team. And I think this Saturday will be a great test to see, is Merrill ready to take that step and really put themselves in a position to be that conference champion? Or is Wausau East saying not so fast? Like, here we are, we're like Ian said tonight, we're looking to be a 2-year-in-a-row playoff team and kind of establish ourselves.
I think if Wausau East wins this game, they put themselves in great position because, again with this new playoff system, I don't know whether it's going to be the same because recent years, 3 and 4 in the conference has got you in. if you win this one, you get back to 2-3 in the conference with 2 home games coming up. You feel pretty good for East. If they lose, then you're forced to win both games. They're still, I think, a pretty good shot to win against Lakeland and Antigo.
Yep.
But boy, it makes their life a lot easier if you can get this one. And as you said, I mean, for Merrill, all of a sudden they'll be putting themselves in a position to win a conference championship, which is pretty amazing in itself. And they still have Tomahawk on their schedule coming up, which could lead to a massive game there. So again, it's a very intriguing game on Saturday. And can Wausau East build on what we saw last week? And that's so often the case where we can see, boy, that was wonderful. With high school kids, it can change so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if Merrill comes out of this thing with a W and is 5-2, 4-1 in conference, I think Coach Wadzinski would tell you that this is where they expected to be, wanted to be, and worked really hard to be. But I don't think there's a lot of other people who would have said after Week 7 that they would think Merrill would be 5-2, 4-1 in conference.
And it chose that first conference game. I mean, we were kind of surprised, 21-14 at Mosinee. It's like, oh, Merrill kept it close in Mosinee. They're probably saying, well, we probably should have won that game now. It's like, CWC Large. Marathon in Stratford. All of a sudden, this game has got more intriguing because you have a Marathon team that has some real weapons on offense we've seen the last couple of weeks. And Marathon is, I'm putting my fingers together, pretty darn close to being a 5-1 team.
Yeah.
They had that game against Auburndale that they had a chance to win with a field goal at the end. They had a game against Loyal Greenwood where they led going into the fourth quarter. Saw that one slip away. But they didn't let that get them down. They come back the last 2 weeks, had a massive offensive night last week. But this will be I'm curious to see if Marathon can keep up that offense against Stratford, who's been a very good defense this season.
They've been a very good defense, but they've also had to play way more close games than they have in the past. And Marathon has made games close this year. I mean, they have the 3 wins, 2-2 in conference. But they've been right there in a couple games that they lost as well. So I think rewind 364 days or 3 or whatever it is, and you're probably not giving Marathon much of a chance in the Marathon Stratford matchup. I'm very intrigued by this game. Stratford has been playing very well, but other than Wittenberg, they haven't played a really tough opponent lately either. So this should be a good one.
Amherst at Wyowega Fremont. Amherst 6-0, 4-0. Wyowega 3-3, 1-3. Amherst still has, I would say, their toughest games on the schedule. Wyowega, Stratford, and Wittenberg Burnhamwood. They have been dominant, though. That's the thing that kind of jumps out to me, that they've got great weapons on the offensive side of the football. I'm curious to see who can slow them down. Even Marathon, they lost 40-7 a couple weeks ago. This Marathon team's been pretty solid. But, boy, Amherst has just been a buzzsaw so far.
Yeah, I think until somebody proves otherwise, Amherst is far and away the favorite in this conference right now, and they've earned it. They've proved it. A little bit like Spash maybe early on, right? Like we haven't seen the quality opponent wins, and those are still on their schedule in front of them, but they've done what they needed to do against who's been on their schedule to this point.
Wittenberg Burnhamwood at Colby. Whitburn, that big win last week, now in a position to put themselves in a very good position for a playoff. But Colby has just been it's been a struggle for a program that's usually pretty good.
Yep, tough season for Colby. Obviously, they have a great tradition. They're still gearing up to win football games. They appear to, like I think you've mentioned a couple times this year, injury bug has kind of bit them, made it a challenge. And in Wittenberg, this is one they definitely wouldn't need to get in the W column, and they played well last week. There's probably no reason to think that this won't be a good win for them.
Spencer Columbus at Loyal Greenwood. Spencer Columbus 2-4, 1-3. Loyal Greenwood 4-2, 2-2. Spencer Columbus is a team that I think is better than the record. They played close games all year long. Even last week, 35-22 against Amherst. If there's a game that kind of stood out to me while I was getting ready that could be an upset game, this one kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, you look at the record 2-4, 1-3, and you think struggles for sure. Not a very good football team, whatever. But if you know what this conference is, and you know what they've done or really haven't been able to do in the past, I got a lot of respect for Spencer Columbus this year. Something has changed in that program. I don't know if it's talent. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's depth in numbers or what the case is. But they are a much more competitive team this year. And I think Loyal Greenwood was feeling fantastic and looking really, really good. And I think they're sitting at 2-2. right? So,
Yep.
I mean, I think this one could, I think you're right. I think there's definitely an upset alert maybe lurking in this one.
Merriwood CWC, Edgar. The buzzsaw that Jerry Sins drives every fall, it seems. And they're taking on an Iola Scandinavia team that had been struggling for much of the year. It's hard to lose when you don't give up points.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I look at this one. Iola Scandinavia is one who kind of has been in that tweener role the last few years. Felt like they were maybe taking a little step forward, and this year they have not proven that they were ready to take that next step.
I heard they were banged up this year. So
And there you go. Kind of that same thing
you know.
with Colby. I mean, traditionally a strong program doing good things. Really tough matchup for them against Edgar. I think you hit it on the head. Hard to win games when you don't score points. Probably
Hard to lose games when you don't give up points.
Exactly.
Abbotsford and Auburndale. Both teams are 5-1. This will be one of the highlight games of the week in Central Wisconsin. Abby 4-0 in the conference. Auburndale 3-1. Their only loss came to Edgar. Game being played in Auburndale.
Yeah, these are the Abbotsford ones, right? Like, who is Abbotsford? Like, this is, you feel really good, and then last week you kind of get surprised a little bit about. I mean, the outcome was what they wanted, but the number of rushing yards they gave up last week is interesting. And
against a team that had not won a game on the field this year.
Exactly.
That's the thing that can
yeah,
jump out.
I mean that's a tough one for them. But this is a extreme, probably a favorite matchup for sure in the CWC Merriwood CWC Small, but maybe the matchup of the week and the whole thing.
Pittsville and Assumption, and for these two teams, a win makes it much more likely they can make the playoffs. A loss, I don't think that you make the playoffs.
Yeah, and obviously Pittsville's got to feel really good about their game last week.
I think they're going to run the ball.
Yeah, I think they might. I think that's.
Give it to Dawson Luther.
I can imagine it wasn't a super hard scout for Assumption this week
Stop
after
Dawson
watching.
Luther.
Exactly. And we've talked about this week in and week out. Assumption's last year's an 11-man football team, and
to be a playoff team.
Kind of like we talked about Spencer Columbus. I think Assumption is kind of that same team down here. I think they're doing good things and heading. Obviously, they're heading out, but they're kind of maybe trying to go out with a bang, and this would certainly be that.
And this week's Rosholt makeup is Pacelli, because they were scheduled to play Rosholt, who left the conference, and they will be heading to Sun Prairie Saturday to take on Aurora Catholic Central. So my sister lives in Aurora, Illinois, so I should have got a scouting report. But
I'm sure she'd have been excited if you'd have asked her for that.
I have no idea. We're just mentioning because we're running short on time.
I'll say this: they're going to play at a great stadium on Saturday down in Sun Prairie. That's for sure.
Yep. Nice big press box. Yeah. Which is what I always look at. 8-player Newman Catholic back in action after a week off, taking on winless Port Edwards. Port was a tri-champion in the conference last year, but they've struggled this year. Newman 4-2, 3-2. They're missing Quincy Fender for the year. Cooper Gould, receiver, he unfortunately tore an ACL. He's out for the year. A couple of other players are going to be at the doctor tomorrow to see whether or not they can play. So, again, the injury issues for Newman. But Port, again, struggling this year. So, for Newman, hopefully a good homecoming. That game will be heard on the Sports 2 stream of WXCO.FM and the Civic Media app. But for Newman, they're gonna battle. That's one thing. We saw that against Marion Tigerton a couple weeks ago. I don't know how they kept it that close with all those injuries.
Yeah, is this Friday night game under the lights? Is this their first homecoming game under the lights? Yeah.
Right.
So how exciting for them, and great opportunity for them, hopefully, to get a nice win in front of their home crowd under the lights. Hopefully there'll be a lot of flashing lights in their fancy new setup.
And one more 8-player game to mention: Athens and Phillips. Athens 5-1, Phillips 4-2. For Athens, as they try to work their way to a playoff. A big game for them on the road. So, again, I think Athens has been a very impressive team here in Central Wisconsin this week. But anything you're really looking forward to this week in our final 45 seconds?
Yeah, I think kind of the matchups we talked about. I think there's maybe one almost in each conference that I think kind of tilts the scales a little bit or really makes that playoff picture become clear or more clear. I also love that next week and the week after we'll start talking about those big matchups that are still looming out in those conferences.
And we will still try to figure out this playoff system. But make sure you join us for Wausau West and Marshfield Friday night, Newman Catholic Port on the Sports 2 stream Friday, and Easton Merrill on Saturday, all here on 98.9 WXCO. So enjoy the weekend, and maybe next week will be chillier.
Week 7, here we come.
Thanks for joining us here on 98.9 WXCO.